Hey there everybody, this is Mystic Fish and welcome to episode 25 of our Factorio series where we are building an expandable base. What you are looking at here is going to be the mall. So if you will recall here, this is one of the remaining items that we have not yet built here in terms of being able to populate the base. This is where we're going to put together all of the construction materials that we are going to need. And I did manage to cram just about everything into one grid square here. So let me just give you a brief tour here. I'm not going to go through everything in great detail. The main thing that I wanted to have upgraded here and available in great quantities are intermediates, in particular gears, green circuits, and red circuits. So I did a little build here, and this will consume basically a full belt of iron completely when it's running at full speed, and half a belt of copper or so. This is very similar in style to some of the other linear builds that we have seen. Just sort of spacing things out to make sure that we stay beacon unaligned and so on. So, so these are populating these belts here. Then I also decided to beaconize the production of blue belts and blue undergrounds, as well as obviously the yellow and red variants that lead up to them. This whole thing here consumes 2 full iron belts. But these are things that we're going to need in pretty big quantities as we go. I took a look at some of our science builds, and they have almost as many undergrounds as belts in them. So we are going to need a lot of these just in terms of upgrading the base over time. So I decided to beaconize those. Almost everything else, I thought, you know what, I don't think we're going to need to build things that fast. And so I decided to optimize more for cramming everything into a space rather than trying to build things as fast as possible. So generally speaking, we can really build most things just with several ingredients. And so what I have here is a 4th iron belt. We've got half a belt of copper and half a belt of steel. Here is the red circuits coming in from above. I'm putting stone bricks on the other side of those. And then here's the green circuits and gears. Turns out with just these 4 belts, you can make just about everything that you need. Let's see. So what is the overall... What's the overall deal here? So leaving 2 spaces between the belts and the assemblers means that we can conveniently use long-handed inserters, red inserters, in order to feed things in from all of the belts pretty conveniently. All of the outputs are ending up in storage chests. The storage chests have a logistic filter on them so that if we deconstruct any of this stuff anywhere, the construction bots will bring it back here. Or if we have stuff in our inventory that we get rid of, the logistics bots will do it. But the idea is that they'll bring it back here, and then there is a separate circuit network condition here that looks at how much is in the box and prevents us from putting too much in here. I am going to go back around, and there's a couple places where I did this already, but I'll do the rest of this offline. So for example, here is the hazard refined concrete, and we take a look here, we can see that in this build, we have 380 tiles of the refined hazard concrete. And so what I've done is I've limited the amount in here to 380. And so the idea is that what I want to do is I want to limit how much is being put into these boxes to support sort of building or upgrading sort of one grid worth of stuff at a time. We're gonna actually do some circuit network stuff, I think, in a later episode to think through how we upgrade that stuff. But that is the idea. That way stuff gets recycled. In particular, Any yellow belts that get picked up, for example, will come back here, which means while we're in the process of upgrading the base from, say, yellow belts to red belts, all the yellow belts we're picking up will end up in here and they'll get turned into red belts. So we do have like a little bit of recycling, reprocessing going on. In general, stuff is next to each other where there's a chain of production, like yellow splitters into red splitters into blue splitters, or the assembly machine 1, 2, 3. We've got a special build of speed modules just for the assembly machine 3s. We've got inserters sort of chained along with each other. We've got steel chests here. We can see that there's a box just for them, but we're also putting them on this belt so they can be picked up by some of the logistics chests. Looking at these, I think we're really just only going to ever need we won't need red requester chests, because I think we'll be able to use the storage chests with logistics filters on them just fine for that stuff. We are using requester chests, and I think we'll use the buffer chests when it comes to building the builder train, which we'll get to in a moment. Let's see. So most of the rest of the stuff is pretty straightforward. What else is there to sort of highlight here? So we do have, there are several things that get built with iron sticks, right? And so I've put them on an additional belt along the inside here. And so that lets us build, in particular, rails. We are going to need lots of rails to go out and go outposting. We are going to need stone furnace at first as we set up the initial smelting. We've snaked some extra stone in here, really just for the stone furnaces and the rails. We are not going to build boilers and steam engines in here, because I think the idea is that if we are needing those things, we'll build them at the jumpstart base, where we're still using steam power. But then otherwise the sticks can come through and we can build the stations and the medium and large power poles using them. We then also have some things that use copper cables. So we have a copper cable build. We do this little trick here. So the output comes here, goes on the underground and lands on the inside of this belt. We have all our circuit network stuff, and in particular the loudspeakers will need the last thing that needs sticks here. So let's see. I decided that we could build beacons right in here and probably not have to speed them up. I think we'll be able to produce beacons so much faster than the modules that will go in them that I think this will be okay for us. Let's see. I did actually build a bunch of military stuff in here too. And so there's actually a path for crude oil to come in here so we can make flamethrower fuel. I find that, while we're still in a tank, flamethrowers are very useful when we're clearing some of the bigger biter bases. But I did go and decide, let's go build some of the armors, right? So here's modular armor. That's one of the first interesting armors that we'll be building, as well as sort of portable solar panels and things like that. We're building, here's a bunch of stuff that use engines, for example. So in particular, pumps and locomotives and flamethrower engines, or flamethrower turrets. The engines also come down here to feed electric engines. The electric engines, some of them are getting put out here into logistics chests for use in building some of the more advanced personal equipment. But the rest of it is coming over here and feeding our flying robot frames. This is our bot build here. So the frames come across. We're building construction bots and logistics bots. We're stocking some up in here because we'll take those with us when we go build an outpost. And but then otherwise what we do is we make sure that there's a little wire condition here which says, hey, if there's not already a construction bot in here, put one in. And same with the logistics bots here. So So basically, what we do is we always have some logistics bots and construction bots ready to go into the RoboPort. And you can see that these are controlled here, these two inserters. So they are not just inserting things into the RoboPort. So I'll explain how that works in a minute. I just want to finish sort of giving a highlight here. We've got a build here for explosives in particular. So here's our mines. That's going to be sort of a major point of defense, especially early on. We are going to need to make cliff explosives in order to clear stuff, and grenades as well for our own personal use. Here's a bunch of stuff for building explosive cannon shells and artillery and explosive rockets, and these will be useful when we get to Spidertrons. These are going to be useful for when we have a tank, and obviously once we get artillery, we'll start adding those to our outposts. And around the base here, we've got a build for laser turrets. A lot of the tier 1 things, like here's the tier 1 personal battery and the tier 1 personal RoboPort. The tier 2 versions of those I decided to do with logistics bots. By the time we're getting into using this stuff, we'll have logistics bots. And so I figured it was just easier to do this than to continue threading belt stuff here. So a lot of this stuff is limited, so it only builds sort of one thing. Several of these things are... Do we actually build one of these? I'm wondering. Yeah, okay. So we are very slowly... What are you waiting on? Oh, blue. Yeah, so I've got a blue circuit build. Some of these things are going to rely on blue circuits and low density structures, like I think this one needs LDS, or tier 2 speed modules. So, we'll wait until we get to those having those at other parts of the base, and we'll just, I think, modify our builds to allow for those things to be put into some storage chests so that they can get over here to be built. But most of the stuff in here, we really only need to build like, a limited number of. So, I think it's okay to use logistics bots to carry them across. What else? Here is the iron ore coming in, so we can make concrete. We have concrete coming out over here, and we've actually replaced the stone bricks with concrete from this point forward. That lets us build some of the nuclear power stuff, artillery cannons, and then the sort of advanced types of concrete here. What else do I want to highlight here? I think that there's a big mass of circuit stuff here. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I want to see if there is really anything else. I mean, most of this is, I think, pretty self-explanatory. There's a chunk where, right, so here's an additional belt just for pipes, and so we have all the stuff that gets built with pipes over in here. Right. So let's talk about this big mass of circuitry here. So what the heck is this doing? So what this is doing is it is at a high level, what it is doing, it is checking to see if our bots are busy all the time. And if they are, then that suggests we need some more bots. And so these last two combinators here, and I'll explain when we get here. Basically, every once in a while, if the bots have been too busy, they'll stick a logistics bot or construction bot signal onto this wire, which comes up here and controls these input inserters. So basically, this stuff here is figuring out when do we need more logistics bots or construction bots. All right, so I'm gonna walk through this relatively quickly, but if you are not interested in what this is, you could probably skip ahead to the end. I think this is the last thing we'll cover here in this episode. But what this is doing is this is working in 15-second chunks. And what it is doing is it says if the bots have been, and does it separately for logistics bots and construction bots, but for that 15 seconds, if the bots have been more than 90%, if more than 90% of those bots have been busy on average, then we're going to add some more bots. And so that is what that's what this is basically doing. And so this is all a bunch of math. I'm sure there are folks in the comments that will tell me how I can simplify this, but this makes sense to me, and it's something that I can maintain and inspect at various points in time. And so, okay, so first thing we gotta do is we gotta start with a little clock. So here is a T to count ticks, and this is a decider combinator, and so this is going to count from 0 up to 900 and then loop back around. And so 900 ticks is 15 seconds. There are 60 ticks per second, so 60 times 15 is 900. So this is counting up basically 15 seconds over and over. Then what we do is we have something that's observing that, and every time it's 0, it's going to fire a C signal. So this is going to be our clock. So every 15 seconds we'll get a C signal. Then we also invert it. So if the tick counter is not 0, then we're going to say that D is going to be on. So D is mostly going to be on, except for the one tick where C fires. So I think of D here, the D signal is not C. And so you can see over here on the right, the output signal there is pretty constant D, except when it flashes. You can see when the T gets up to 900, we should see a quick blip that takes the D away. And there it went. It was a quick blip. I don't know if that's going to show up in the frame rates by the time we do this on YouTube, but we will see. Okay, so now down here we do some math on the bot availability. So we have a wire hooked up to the RoboPort, and we're looking at the bot statistics. And so that tells us how many total logistics bots we have and how many of them are available, how many total construction bots we have and how many of them are available. I found it easier to reason about this if we calculated how many were busy. So if we take the total logistics bots minus the available ones, then A will be how many logistics bots are busy. And then same thing with construction bots. So B is how many construction bots are busy, total. Okay, then we come out of here and we take the A and the B and we multiply them by 100 because we want to compute a percentage, but we only have integer arithmetic. So if I want to do a numerator divided by a denominator and have that be a percentage, I need to multiply the numerator by 100 and then divide by the denominator, and then that will give me my percentage. So this multiplies A and B times 100. And then we feed them into these here. This is where we get our percentages. So this is the number of busy logistics bots times 100 divided by the total logistics bots. And so this gives us what percentage of the logistics bots are busy. And so right now there's, we can see very few, right? About 7 or 8 percent are busy at the moment, which, we can see, yeah, there's like a handful flying around. I think I got around 100 in here. So they're, populating stuff down here for this build. But we can see that that's working for us all right. None of our construction bots are busy, so there's 0 coming out of here. And then the next step here is we are going to just, every tick, we're going to add up these percentages. And so what this does is it takes that D input signal, which is 1 most of the time except for the clock, and it's going to take that input percentage, multiply by 1, which doesn't change it, but there's a loop back here. So every 15 seconds when D becomes 0, it will clear out the memory. Okay, otherwise it is just adding up whatever this percentage was every tick. And then we're also doing that for the construction bots. Okay, now, next thing that we do is that we compute whatever the current sort of average busyness has been. And so we do that by taking the total that we've got here and dividing it by the tick counter, here, T. Now, in order to get the timing to show up right, I actually had to put a no-op in here just for the tick counter because I wanted T and C and D to be synchronized, but actually C and D are computed from T. So that means T is sort of like one tick ahead of C and D. And so I put in just this thing, which doesn't do anything, right? It takes the input and just puts the output, but it introduces a 1 tick delay. So I was able to do that. Then everywhere I do computations with C and D, they show up at the same time as D. So right now we can see that the rolling average, we have 0 busy construction bots. The rolling average here for logistics bots has been about 11%, something like that. Then we take these outputs into here, and here what we do is we look for the clock signal. So at the end of the 15 seconds, we'll have added up and we'll have the average for that last 15 seconds. The C signal comes in, and then we basically grab it at that point and feed it in here. And so then these are looking and saying, hey, for that 15 seconds, was I busier than 90% logistics bots? Then if so, stick some logistics bots in. And then same thing for the construction bots. So so this works. I think I did a bunch of like upgrades and downgrades, and maybe we can see this in action. Like, let's see, what's a thing I can do? Here, I can downgrade a bunch of fast inserters to regular inserters. This should keep, okay, so we're starting with 40 construction bots. They're all busy. And so we can see, yeah, 98, 99, so on. What we should see when the T gets to 900, we should have been busy enough that will fire. And so the question is, we did stick additional construction bots in here, right? So that is actually working as we would like, which is good stuff. I'm gonna put these back to fast inserters. So this is going to be the mall. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to actually produce a blueprint which is all the way downgraded to assembly machine 2s, and where we have modules to sort of tier 1 modules. And we're gonna downgrade all the way to yellow belts. And downgrade from stack inserters to fast inserters. And then that way, I think we'll run that way for a while, because I think we'll get all of the, we need yellow science to get all of this stuff activated, but I think the intent is we're gonna get yellow science and space science up and running with yellow belts, even before we do any other upgrades. So to assembly machine 3s or red or blue belts or anything like that. So what I think that means is I can produce one blueprint, which is all of this stuff minus the beacons, or maybe I'll leave the beacons. I guess I can leave the beacons in the blueprint. I think that wouldn't hurt anything. They just wouldn't be built initially till we've researched them, which is fine. But that way what I can do is I can just keep coming and restamping the blueprint, and that should, as we research additional recipes, it should just set all of the recipes. And then we'll come back in here later after that's all done. Once we've got recipes and all this stuff, then we can start upgrading things, and from then on we won't need the blueprint anymore. So that is, I think, the plan. We will take the blueprints here for the mall as usual. I'm gonna go ahead and grid align this thing because that seems useful to do. It'll make it easier to snap in. One of the things that I did was I did leave constant commutators marking what all the input belts are. That is a little nod to future Mystic Fish, who will stamp down this blueprint. Won't have any of this stuff in it. Ooh, here's one. I need to get this guy. I need to get this guy in with the rest of the petroleum gas. Oh, I have to come over here. And I have some petroleum gas over here somewhere. And a couple of pipes. Okay. That should... Okay, you do have petroleum gas. Okay, so that's good. Okay. But anyway, I marked all the inputs here with constant commentators since we won't have these infinity loaders in the blueprints. That way we'll remember what we need to plug in where. And I've also done that for petroleum gas, lubricant, and oil and water, which are other things that we will need. Okay, well, that's what we have for this episode. So as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Until then, bye.